Hello! I'm so glad that you are joining me for this Supernaturally Healthy blog post. For those of you that don't know, I'm Kezia Hall. I'm a holistic health coach. I run Supernaturally Healthy, and I get really excited about helping you heal your bodies and love your food, because those two things can be one, thankfully. And today I'm talking about why I don't eat grains. So what I mean by grains are things like wheat, rye, amaranth, barley, millet, rice, any sort of like grain type substance that most people eat a lot of. I have not eaten grains for the last 3 years. I first started not eating them when I began the Gut and Psychology Syndrome diet, which is a gut healing protocol. Which there'll be more links about that below. And that was when I began that to really help to heal my digestion, which was a total mess. And since then, I just feel so much better not eating grains. So I'm going to explain a couple of the reasons for why I personally don't eat them. But it is important to point out that this is my choice, my body, and I'm going to explain with you some of the research and the information that I've come across that has informed my decision. But this is by no means you should do exactly what I did because I did it. Your body is completely unique, and your lifestyle and your capacity is totally different. And I just want to provide this information for you so you can make informed choices, you can do research for yourself, and you can make powerful choices for you. So let's dive on in. One of the reasons I do not eat grains is that most grains contain gluten. Not all grains, I do realize that. Don't tell me that in the comments below. I realize not all grains contain gluten, but a lot of them do. So especially things like wheat, rye, spelt, all things like that are grains that contain gluten. And now gluten for me is just really problematic for my body. So recently I went traveling and ended up with having lots of regular sneaky bits of gluten in my food because we ate out a lot, and there's not always a lot you can do about sauces and language barriers and all that sort of stuff. And for me, gluten really impacts my immune system. So after about 5 weeks of lots of consistent hidden gluten, my joints start to flare up. I get very fatigued, and my mood really starts to go downhill. And there's lots of research around that about the inflammatory impact of gluten on the body. I don't have celiac disease, and I've been tested for it a million times, but gluten still impacts my immune system and my body poorly, which is why one of the reasons why I obviously avoid gluten, but I also avoid grains as well, because there is some evidence to show that certain gluten-free grains are actually cross-reactive in the body. So meaning that you could have a gluten-free grain, say like amaranth, which is a gluten-free grain, but when I eat it, my body would respond and react like I had eaten gluten. There's this kind of cross correlation, and there's other foods that some evidence shows does that as well, like even coffee. In some people, it can cause the body to react just as it has gluten, because there's this kind of cross reactive process. So that's reason number one, is the gluten in grains just does not do me any good, and I don't want that cross reaction either. Number two is that grains are not that nutritionally rich. I'm a big proponent of maximizing my food. So all the foods I eat, I want to be as nutrient dense as humanly possible so that I can give my body all the good stuff that it needs. And so for decades we've been told that our diets should be based around lots and lots of grains. But that's not what the evidence is currently showing us right now. And there are nutrients in grains. So you have a couple of like B vitamins and some other nutrients in things like your brown rice or your whole grains and that kind of thing. But we can't always absorb them and get the most out of them. So, and when it comes to, if you're comparing like some wholemeal bread to like some organic raw butter or some organic beef or some spinach, then it's always going to fall short in terms of its nutrient density. And another reason is that a lot of grains contain enzyme inhibitors too, the most popular being citric acid, which actually prevents our bodies from absorbing all the good stuff that is within it. So when it gets to our digestion, there's this enzyme inhibitor that kind of stops our body getting at the good stuff. So it might have some good stuff in, but as I've talked about in previous things, we're not what we eat, we are what we digest. So if we can't digest the good stuff in there, then it just becomes a kind of a bit of a waste filler food that doesn't really do all that much. So that is another reason that I don't eat them. And when I do eat grains, so say if I do occasionally eat rice or oats, I love oats, so I will occasionally have some oats and things like that, then what I do is I soak them beforehand. So overnight in some salted water, I'll soak my oats or my rice, and that just helps release a little bit of the citric acid. If you do want to eat grains, and you still can do that and help reduce with the citric acid, and nuts also have quite a lot of citric acid in as well, so I also soak and dehydrate all my nuts too. So number 3 is grains make glucose. Grains are just another form of carbohydrate, and there's nothing wrong with carbohydrate because carbohydrate gets digested and it becomes glucose in our blood, and glucose gives us energy, it keeps us going, keeps us alive, which is all good. But because we've made grains our staple, meaning we have toast for breakfast, pasta for lunch, couscous and lamb for dinner, and biscuits and other snacks with grains throughout the day, actually it just means throughout the day we're constantly just having this overload of glucose in our bodies. And again, this is different for each individual, but a lot of the time we're just getting too much kind of this insulin spiking food. And when we have too much glucose in the blood, then what we're going to do is basically store that as fat, which is something I don't want in my body. And also that also has some connection with, I think personally, with the increase of diabetes that is happening now with young people and young adults. It's, type 2 diabetes used to be something that you'd only see in the elderly, whereas now it's very common to see it in young people, in kids and teenagers, and that has to do with lots of factors, obviously, but I think this constant intake of glucose-forming foods and not a focus on enough fats and proteins can have an impact on that. So that's reason number 4 for why I personally don't eat grains. Number 4, I think I just said that, but this is actually reason number 4, is for optimum brain health. There's a great doctor called Dr. Perlmutter, which I'll put links to all his stuff below, because this is a lot of what I'm going to say is just things that I have found from him. He is really interested in the impact of grains, carbs and glucose on our neurological health. And so he's written some great books called The Grain Brain or The Brain Maker. Again, I'll put links to that below. But it's just talking about some really interesting research around gluten in grain consumption and the impact on brain health. So, for example, there is Alzheimer's is now starting to be given the title and the name of type 3 diabetes, because Alzheimer's disease results from resistance to insulin in the brain. That's kind of, I've not just made that up, that's what some of the latest research is telling us, which is really interesting and important. And for me, Alzheimer's and dementia runs on both sides of my family, so I want to optimize my brain health as much as humanly possible. And so that's one of the many reasons why I choose not to eat grains, in order to support my optimum brain function and to keep my body really, really healthy and happy. So when saying all that, those are just a couple of the reasons. There's a lot more reasons there. If you want more in-depth information about the actual science and studies, then make sure you head to my website, and there's links to that below, because there is some really interesting stuff happening out there. But these are my reasons for not eating grains. And with that, it's really important that I do get my carbohydrates from other sources, so I eat lots of butternut squash, I eat buckwheat I've introduced recently, which is a seed flour, I eat lots of sweet potatoes and other starchy vegetables, and then I will occasionally have oats and rice because that's fun, but I just don't make them the staple. So this doesn't mean you have to cut out all gluten, or all grains, but it's just about changing our habits and changing what is the foundation of our meals, which often for most people is rice, is pasta, is spaghetti, or whatever it is. Often that's the foundation of our meal, and actually we need to flip that and just make it a small part of our diet and make things like vegetables, really healthy organic meats, fats, proteins, all that sort of stuff. Those need to be the things that we focus on instead of just be relying on grains. So I hope that has been helpful for you. Let me know if you have any other questions going on with that, and I would love to hear with you any questions that you have. And if you are wanting some help with going gluten-free and you're a bit like, I've no idea how to start, then make sure you check out my free Going Gluten-Free e-guide, which you can grab underneath. Otherwise, have a brilliant day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.